Okay, question of the day. Is All Advice autobiographical?
It's All Advice Autobiographical. Yes. And no.
Okay, please qualify that.
Dang it, I thought I just answered. That was the end of the discussion.
That's not enough. I mean, this is a whole big
I think all advice, you're talking about advice that you give to somebody or I give to
Right.
somebody, right? I think it's autobiographical in the fact that I can't separate my own experience from the advice, right? Even if I want to. I can try and separate myself from the advice, but the reality is I'm giving it from some experience that I've lived or had, or I wouldn't have the advice if I hadn't lived it or heard it or learned it, right? So I think it's autobiographical. In fact, maybe what flavors the advice is, hey, I heard this great thing, and my experience with that has been, and I turned it into something that actually I own, and now I might be able to teach it in a different way that you could relate to it, that you might not be able to relate to it otherwise. So I'm not saying that as a negative thing. I think it's probably a positive thing. So I'm going to take it back and I'm going to say, yes, all advice is autobiographical. But to lesser or more extent, I may have just heard a saying today and I say, hey, did you hear Seneca said, and I don't put any of my own taste on it. But the fact that I heard it and lived it makes it by definition somewhat autobiographical. Otherwise, how did I know that?
Interesting. So when I try to answer this question in my head, it's a little bit
You mean
difficult.
before when you were prepping?
No, right now. I think this. I think that a majority of advice is autobiographical, but I don't need to taste yellow snow to know that I don't want to try yellow snow.
Or if you were 6 and you'd never seen snow, and I took you to Jackson Hole and you had no parents, would you know not to try yellow snow?
No.
So maybe it isn't something that you were born with.
Yeah.
Maybe it is something you learned along.
This is starting to feel like a chicken and egg situation.
It's a little chicken and egg. Right? It's hard to separate your own experience from that. But I don't think all advice has to be purely based on my experience, right? But I don't have to commit suicide to know I don't want to commit suicide, right? But I have to have lived long enough to have seen the experience in other people or lived it through other people or been a part of it and know what a horrible tragedy that is for the person who happens to and for their family.
Sure.
To know I want to avoid that at all costs.
Yep.
So it's not autobiographical in the fact that I have to live it,
Right.
but I had to live to learn it.
Yeah, so
That makes
maybe the
sense.
real key is being able to empathize with a situation and not necessarily have to live the actual
You
experience.
don't have to experience it.
So this almost seems like we've got almost a little bit of a disagreement, not quite. So what I'd really love is to hear your opinion. So if you guys are following us on social media, if you're not, you should be. Dr. Tim, Living Every Minute, Dr. Tim LEM, and then Dr. Timothy Reynolds on Facebook, Billy_Living Every Minute on Instagram, and Billy Kreutz on Facebook. Get on social media and let us know what your perspective is.
And make sure you agree with me.
And make sure you agree with Dr. Tim.